Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and by RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb. Welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 138. And joining us in Studio C at MotorWeek Central today is our writer-producer, Brian Robinson.
What's up, John?
Our road test producer, Ben Davis.
Hello.
Assistant producer, Greg Carlos.
Hey, I'm trying to adjust my chair. It's not working.
And our writer, hope he gets comfortable, Patrick Lucas.
Hey, everybody.
And also we were talking about coffee before we went on. Sounds like you took it intravenously.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we have our lightning.
That's the new way.
It's a suppository.
We have our lightning round. That's too much information. A viewer question and a rant and rave section. But first, we've got cars to get into. McLaren 570S. We just recently had the pleasure of having this so-called entry-level McLaren at Roebling Road in Savannah, Georgia. Let's go around the table. What'd you think of it? Is it really an entry-level supercar or entry-level anything? Who wants to start?
Certainly the cheapest.
Brian Robinson always
Well, if I
wants to
don't,
start,
then you
right?
look at me like,
Start.
I think we all just
We all just sort of we opt to you. Go ahead.
It's the cheapest McLaren that you can get, so if that's entry level, sure.
What is it, price-wise?
180?
80, something like
yeah,
that.
160
Yeah.
chain. I don't remember exactly.
It's up there.
But still, it's what, 70, at least 70 grand less than the next level. Anyway, so what do you think of it?
Part of their new sports series. I was pretty impressed with it. The engine is incredible. Launching that thing, Greg can probably touch on that more than me. But and we had it at Roebling. It was fun on the track. It maybe wasn't nailed down as some other supercars, but it was still, in that regard, it was maybe even more fun than a lot of them, just because it got away from me a little bit.
Do you think that's only partially because the aerodynamics are fixed? It doesn't have a movable wing or anything? Got a fixed wing? And
No,
you just
really.
think it's the way the car was tuned?
I'm not really sure. I'm not an engineer, but
Lack of super.
and I haven't really driven the P1 or 650 on a track, so I can't really compare it to them with the active aero.
Do you have fun with it?
Oh, absolutely.
Greg?
Yeah, I think as far as entry level goes, it might be even cooler than the actual supercars, just because you do actually get a chance to drive it. It's something that you kind of have to master, and it's not driving for you. It's not like any of the Porsches, really. It's a pretty visceral experience, and to touch back on with I think you were talking about. I learned that word from you. Back to launching it.
As long as you know what it means.
Launching it's actually pretty cool, and it's McLaren. I think it's maybe built up a reputation as being like maybe one of like a nerdier person's car, just because it's so technical. I think it's cool because for launch control, it's not just like pressing the brake and then the accelerator. You actually have to go into a setting, and then it gives you instructions, press the brake, and then you have to wait to build boost while you're on the throttle. And then once you build the boost, there is still a little bit of a lag. It doesn't just like throw you off the line like a GTR would.
It's very less than spectacular off the line.
But once it does hit and once the turbos spool up, I finished the quarter mile, I think, at 133, and you get there fast.
Yeah, that definitely makes up for. Those first couple feet off the line, it looks like a air-cooled Beetle.
Yeah,
just barely moving. It's a unique shade of orange too.
Yeah, it's a really good-looking car, spectacular from all of our camera angles.
I was just kidding. Everyone I see is orange, and I hate it.
Yeah, but they have
That's McLaren orange. That's their color.
But they also have
care.
more than one orange. There's
They
like
do.
At least,
it's like sunset orange or something like that.
But
the
that
one with
is
the metal
McLaren
flake.
orange.
Well, the one with the metal flake is not the.
When you show up to
McLaren.
Cars and Coffee and there's two orange ones there, that's just too much orange. You know what I mean?
Patrick, any comments?
I didn't push it on the track, but I drove it around the streets, and my impression is a true track car. We keep saying entry level because I guess that's the only way to describe it.
Yeah.
But it is not comfortable to drive in. It's stiff and it's loud. But yeah, amazing.
Did it get your
Still
adrenaline
amazing.
going, though?
Oh, absolutely. I was, half nervous, half like super excited just to drive it to the track on the streets. But it's quite a piece of work.
Definitely a supercar in the aspect that it's not comfortable to drive on a daily basis.
Not at all.
So
got that area
therefore, it
locked
definitely is
down.
entry-level supercar.
Let's turn then to that's a good segue to the next car, which is probably almost the opposite of the McLaren 570S for about the same money, the Acura NSX. Technically, second generation of the car. It goes back to 91. I'm the only one at the table that's actually, I think, driven it. Is that right? I believe.
True.
But everybody's seen it, and it's been talked about for so long, it seems like it's one of those cars that you thought came out last year. In general, I had a chance to drive it on the street and on the racetrack. If you like the initial and the first NSX in 91, which was billed then as a supercar that you could drive with everyday reliability, that was loaded with technology, and frankly was an easy car to drive, you will like this one. It does not have any rough edges. It has more technology on it than almost any car I've ever driven, including a lot of electric help. It's got 3 electric motors, one that works with the twin-turbo V6 to take care of turbo lag that you were talking about with the 570S, and 2 more, one at each front wheel, that actually help more in cornering than they do with anything else. And the simplest to use launch control on the planet. You literally just hold the brake pedal down, then hold the gas down, and let off the brake, and you go. After you have to do one setting on the dash. My impression of it on the racetrack, where I was probably the slowest guy out there, was that this is a car that will do whatever you want it to do whenever you want it to do it. So it's very adaptable to the driver rather than the driver normally having to adapt to a supercar. Comfortable on the street. The seats are comfortable, great visibility, all those things that we used to talk about the original NSX. It's all there. The car's gotten panned by some because it didn't have all the rough, roaring edges of some of the like a Lambo or a McLaren. But that's not the point of the car. I think they did a good job. It took them a long time to do it, but we'll see. Any comments though from what you've seen and talked about it?
I
Go
just
ahead.
have a question.
Yep.
Because I went to the factory where they built it.
Right.
So
You just got back from that.
Right. So I've seen it, and it looks amazing. And a lot of the journalists who also went on that trip had also driven it, like you, and they were all saying really positive things. So,
all the initial press reports were pretty much negative.
My question is, it does 0 to 60 in what, 2.8
Yeah,
seconds?
something like that, under 3.
And it's $150,000.
150 to 153 to 203. Yeah.
Why would you ever need to go faster than that and pay $400,000, $500,000, $1 million for a car?
You sure you work for a car enthusiast operation?
Why would you need to pay this
I'm
much?
just,
Why do you have
I'm just a
Civic?
practical guy.
Let's get a
Why?
Civic.
Yeah, I mean, for that matter, why do you need? Most
just
people
saying
would say,
you can
"Why
go-
do you need a 3-second car?"
Right, exactly. So if you could go 2.8 seconds for $200,000, why would you do it for $400,000 or $500,000?
Probably comes down to exclusivity, doesn't it?
I guess.
I'm not sure why these cars sell half the time anyway.
At that price range, you look at cars, art as well.
They
So-
are
Yeah,
art.
true. But I
So
mean, the
there's
NSX
that.
is pretty amazing looking.
Yeah, it is amazing looking. I don't think it's as outrageous
No,
as
it's
some,
not
but then
radical,
again, that's the point. It's not supposed to.
Did it strike you the same way that 91 did when you first saw it?
Yeah, like a toned down supercar that you actually could drive every day. I used to always call it the doctor's supercar, and I think that kind of moniker still fits. Yeah, it really impressed me about the same way. It's not nearly as outrageous. It's easier to drive, although most of the supercars today are pretty easy to drive. But a car that you could probably have a whole lot capability in your own driving style and still survive in on a racetrack. I mean, the car, frankly, they showed us diagrams of what happens when you shut all the electronic aids off, and in that case, you were kind of off the track into the weeds. So this car really saved your butt more than any car I think I've driven in a long time.
I guess my one question would be, since it took so long to come out, like you had mentioned, do you feel like it was time well spent on their part? Like, did it come out the best product they could make, or do you still think there were some things that they could have done better?
There's always things you could improve, but my theory, and that's all it is that when they were designing the car and they were going to put basically another 6-cylinder engine, much like the original car, they looked at what Porsche and Ferrari were doing, and said they're all electrifying their cars to give them a lot more power and adding all these new features. And they said, we can't do this. We've got to stop and rethink this car. And they did. So when you compare this car to a 458 Ferrari or a 918, you can see that was what they aimed at. They made it very clear they aimed it at a 458. And I think then they added a little extra technology to it, particularly in how they use the electric motors. And so I think they've given themselves a slight edge over, I think, the more expensive rivals, but that won't last long.
I think the electric motors were in it from the beginning, but I think they changed it from transverse mounted V6 like the original one to longitudinal mounted like halfway through the development cycle.
They didn't make that clear. They made it out like that was they had rethought it. That originally, I guess and I don't know what year they actually started doing it. That was the electric motors were, I think, a thought, but that the way they're doing it now is much more expensive.
Because to me, it's not all that different than the RLX Sport Hybrid.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it is. It's basically the same system, except it's got the. It's got three motors, three electric motors.
So
that does
RLX.
too. Yeah.
So,
and they didn't make any particular bones about that. They said, it's kind of the same basic concept, but they also, if they're to be believed, they did most of this development in about 18 months, which is pretty fast, including doing their own transmission. The DCT they had with it, the 9-speed, which is pretty impressive too, and that's a different gearbox.
Is the 3.5 liter the same 3.5 liter, or is it that they have in everything else, or is it?
It's a modified version of it.
Modified version.
Yeah, it's got. I've forgotten what the extra bells and whistles, but yeah, it's basically the same. If indeed they did throw the baby out with the bathwater and pretty much start from the beginning, like they said, they did a nice job. I don't know who knows what's next. I mean, this car will probably be around for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, is it going to be one of those like trickle down things where?
I think that's true.
Like in a 918, it would trickle down eventually into a 911 and stuff.
The torque vectoring system they used for the front wheels. I mean, obviously they would have to switch that around and probably use it on the rear wheels and much of the rest of their product line. But I don't see why they couldn't do that or go with a full electric all-wheel drive system on their SUV. So I'm sure there's some trickle down. The one thing that surprised me on the appearance is that it doesn't sport any of the appearance of their new Precision concept, which is going to be their new face. And looking at the Precision, you're thinking, how could they adapt that to the NSX, I guess, at some mid-cycle time, and I guess I'm sure they probably will. But so the car doesn't look like the new face of Acura, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see. They're only going to sell 500 in the U.S. this year, which I thought was a very low number. I don't know what they're worldwide.
I think
800.
800
worldwide. Yeah.
800 worldwide.
Where?
They were building 800 at that facility.
Yeah, so 800 worldwide, 500 in the U.S. That seems like a low number.
Built in Ohio.
Yep.
Built in Ohio.
That was the engine.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our next point in our video. A recap of the Geneva Motor Show. Was there anything there that struck your attention particularly that you think is worthy to talk about?
I know a lot of people, obviously I wasn't there, but there's a lot of discussion over that Aston Martin DB11. I saw a lot of people debating whether it was a good-looking car or whether it was a bad-looking car. I personally think it looks fine.
Did they think it looked too big? Looks big.
It does look
It's
huge.
got a twin-turbo V12.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big
it's
car.
Gonna be a big car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it looks fine. It doesn't look bad by any means. I think some people are a little bit harsh on that. But I also feel like some people just never want things to change. It could always be like, back to the original DB. So
You talking to me?
Well, yeah. I mean,
It's like this DB5 I got right here.
Too soon.
How about two 1,500 horsepower cars? The Bugatti and what was the second one? But anyway, I mean, when everyone's talking about, well, not everyone, but in an age of where fuel economy is somewhat conscious, the horsepower numbers keep getting ratcheted further and further up.
Yeah, was it 1478? I think I have written down here for the Bugatti.
For the Bugatti.
2.6
Yeah, and that
million
doesn't
dollars.
use any electric or anything, right? Whereas everybody else was going with the hybrid systems.
Yeah.
I think that just uses the W16 with
I
4
believe
turbos.
that's right.
That's pretty
Monster
awesome.
car.
Yeah, you'll never get to use that much power though with all the nanny systems that they've got on there. I mean, I wonder if that's just a straight bench number. You know what I mean? I mean, when were you
I'm
ever
sure
gonna
somebody's took it out to some of the executives took it somewhere to.
That's
give
the
it a
first
ring
thing
out.
you'll say. So say you are a buyer of it. That's the first thing you'll say to somebody who asks about the car, right? They'll be like, "Oh, or, how much horsepower? 1,500 horsepower. How much have you ever used?" Well, you can't exactly say that number, but I don't know. You're probably right. Nobody's ever going to use it. I mean, what's the top speed's like 261? Who in the world is ever going to find somewhere to do something like that?
Yeah. Well, Zach could probably find a place.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure he could.
What about other
driveway.
new cars there? I mean, Mercedes took the opportunity to bring out more models of the new E-Class.
And the C-Class.
And the
C43,
C-Class.
like a I don't want to say dumbed down version,
Whoa.
but a less intense version of
dumbed
the
down.
C63.
All sorts of stuff. Audi Q2, Hyundai Ioniq,
Yeah.
Prius Fighter.
Was that Q2 coming here, or was that a Europe thing?
I don't know. I mean,
I've got
it would
the
make sense.
impression
They,
it was-
they
It would
have
make
been
sense to come
talking
here.
about the Q2 coming here, but I don't think they've actually committed
It would make
themselves yet.
sense, I'm sure it would
I have
sell.
a feeling that with gas prices, they might wait for they pop back
Q2
up
is such
a
a
little.
weird. I know it rhymes, but that just doesn't sound like.
Reminds
I
me
wish
too
they
much of
wouldn't have named it the
Q-tip.
Q2. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it just it goes with the.
I know it does, but like,
like
it just
QT.
seems like they could have done something different, or just not even done a Q2.
Speaking Q-tip. So speaking of boxes, Volvo is actually going to take another
Nice.
stab at doing a
Look at
station
that.
wagon, a big wagon, the V90.
V90.
We've already
Looks
had
good.
the S and the XE. It does look pretty good.
124 Spider Abarth, which will
Yeah.
be
Whoa.
pretty cool.
Cool.
So anyway, that show normally, I always say it's kind of like the Victoria's Secrets of auto shows. I think it probably lived up to its name this year. It was a good show, very interesting show. Let's move on now to our lightning round, and our panelists have 2 minutes to debate trending automotive topics. And when the time is up, we will hear the bell. There's the bell. Okay, thank you, Patrick. Here we go. Cadillac XT5, Genesis G90, Honda HR-V, Infiniti Qs and QXs, Toyota CHR. Noticing a trend? Are we exiting the era of named vehicles in place of alphanumeric ones? Audi, Mazda, BMW, Mercedes, plenty of others are doing it or have been doing it for years. Is this where every brand is going? Any comments?
Any brand that plans on selling things internationally is just because that's how it's
Yeah,
internationally done. We're
right.
the only ones that really grasp on the nameplates here in the U.S.
and more, sales are being targeted towards a
Oh,
more
globally.
global.
I had
market.
that question in mind because you just came back from the, what was it, XT5? And isn't that what they said the reason for?
Yeah, actually, they
changing the
actually
name?
explained part of that in the briefing. They were just saying that names, although they're near and dear to the heart of all Americans,
They may mean something different in another language.
They're
Or nothing.
They're difficult to identify the hierarchy of vehicles overseas,
Right.
where the name doesn't mean anything, and overseas they want just a XT5, for instance, and
So you could do an
so that way you know an
XT3 or an
XT7 is
XT7, yeah.
It's just that's the way they work over there.
But why do you think there's? Sorry.
Come on, guys.
Why do you think they're getting away from it in like the U.S. though? Because I mean, is it that much more
That's a
money
good
and time
question.
and effort to?
I think the
Change the
luxury
name for
cars
US.
have been cars that are high end have been going this trend for a long time. So if you want to sell something on the high end and say, "Hey, I'm in that game too," you go that direction. And then you've got that middle level of where people like Mazda think they're playing. Of course, Mazda's been doing it for a long time. But I think a lot of it is followers. We want to play in the Mercedes, BMW, Audi era, so we kind of go that way.
Well, I think they probably couldn't get away with it a couple years ago, maybe a decade or so ago, just because I know from experience, and I'm a younger person, so I don't remember a lot of the older names, but a person like my dad who can't keep the new cars straight. So, like, if they were selling to his age bracket more
Right.
so now than someone to my age, it would make a big difference because they actually couldn't determine what car was which. Whereas now they're selling to people like Patrick, myself, and maybe just a little bit older, and we don't have the same connection to those.
You don't find Mercedes and BMWs any of that confusing?
Oh, I do.
Mercedes, I think,
do.
is very confusing.
And I understand it, and I still think it doesn't make any sense. But I'm just trying to say, it's not as big of a deal for them to have to sell. They're catering to us, not older
It seems
people.
like that they're saying there'll be less name, not brand, but name recognition. I mean, that can cut both ways. Some name that was popular, say, with my generation might be looked at by your generation as being such an antique. So if they use it again, from case in point, Chrysler, no more Town and Country and Dodge Grand Caravan. Now it's the Pacifica. Whether that was a good name or not, they're trying to say, hey, we're not yesterday's news.
Yeah, I mean, that goes all the way back to the Acura Legend. I remember all the hubbub when they got rid of the Legend name because they wanted everyone to associate that car with Acura, not with the name Legend.
Yeah.
I don't think, for instance, Honda, or there's a lot of manufacturers that will never leave their name system because names have been in place for so long. Like I could imagine the Civic ever becoming alphanumeric, but definitely I can see it in new models dropping and why they don't have names.
Yeah, I can't see like Chevrolet or
Taurus. Ford tried it with the Taurus for a while.
The 500.
Okay, thanks, guys. That was a very good
It's 3 minutes.
lightning
It's
round.
too
3
long.
minutes, not 2 minutes. He says too long.
Well,
All
you were
right.
the one that's supposed to ring the bell.
I
at 2
did.
minutes.
Well, he
Yes,
did,
just
and we
went
just
right
kept
past
going. It's just like a presidential debate. It's no
It's like an
different.
Oscar.
Let's talk about a viewer question. Sotos asked. I don't know if Sotos is a first name or a last
I
name.
believe it's his first name.
First name. I own a 1998 Toyota Tacoma truck. I use it for utility duties only. I would like to buy a full-size Toyota or a domestic, but the beds are so high in modern trucks. Is there a functional advantage as far as payloads go? Is this a trend, or is the reasoning marketing based with larger wheels and higher stance selling better for aesthetics? In my experience, a bed floor above my waist level is a disadvantage to quickly load and unload if you're not willing to use a forklift.
Robinson, you should grab a beer with this guy after this.
The beds are too dang high.
I don't disagree with him. I mean, I'm 6 foot tall. If I can't reach over the side rails and touch the bed when I want to load something, that's a disadvantage. And you can't do that hardly anymore.
Well, it's just everything's getting bigger and bigger, and that's just what happens. But I would say get two-wheel drive instead of four-wheel drive because generally the two-wheel drives have
a little lower.
Yeah, different suspension. They sit lower, but then the new Tacoma has the same ride height, whether you get two or four. So even they're getting away from that now.
The only new pickup truck that looks like it's got a reasonable bed height is the new Honda Ridgeline.
I was just going to say,
you can argue whether that's a pickup truck or not.
Right.
I think it's more of a pickup now than it was before. At least they made it look like it.
But I guess to answer his question, is there an actual functional advantage? I mean, is there a reason for it, or is it just aesthetic? Do we just like taller trucks now? Or?
Well, you can give yourself more wheel travel probably.
Which would yield in bigger payload too, bed payload.
But it's probably just because they want to look tough.
Yeah, they're making them bigger and more capable.
And that's probably why SUVs took off, because they still have the super low loading floor, and they still have
that depends
enough
really.
space.
Some of
Tahoe doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
get yourself a minivan.
But Sotos, it seems to be, I think our feeling is that there may be a small practical advantage, but most of it is just the trend to the market. Everybody wants it to be a bigger and
Big
bolder
tough guy.
Big tough guy.
There's room for a El Camino kind of vehicle.
I think so too. Yeah,
and also there's all those little smaller utility vans coming out now. Stuff like that. That's super low load floor. You can just walk stuff in. I don't know if he's looking for something used or new, but that.
I mean, you can't dump a load of dirt in it, but as far as loading bags of stuff,
Sure, you could just put some lowering blocks on a Tacoma or something.
Slam it.
Slam it. There you go. Maybe that's your answer. Take that 98 Tacoma and slam it down. Okay, rants and raves. Anything got something they want to get off their chest or any other part of their body?
Yeah, I don't need to. I'm not going to rant this time. I feel like I keep bringing the room down.
You're an angry person, that's why.
Yeah, but I'm
I'd
trying
like to hear
something.
something from Brian.
So
Come
grunge.
on, drop something.
Brian keeps all of his
got
rants
nothing.
and raves.
He would rant about all of
He
us.
only rants and raves when he. Never mind.
There's
He
a
bottles
treasure
up.
trove of rants in there.
Come on, Brian.
Pull one out.
I got nothing, man.
You used to complain about following my wife down the road to work.
I think we've all been down that road
Because
already.
she never got above the speed limit.
Yep, she's a very safe driver. I have no problems with that.
Anything else
I got nothing.
Just don't
spinning
borrow
you
this
up,
guy's stapler.
Patrick?
I'm good.
Oh my goodness! Everybody's so
I
happy.
think Greg was.
Well, I was just going to rave
on
about something.
All right, rave about something.
Because of I don't know, I kind of was driving and looking at things through like a wide angle lens and getting very contemplative and reflective. But no, just the idea of where we've come in audio in cars now. Just how cool is it that you can just get into a car with your phone in your pocket and all you got to do is just turn up the radio and you listen to anything that you just downloaded on your phone. And then not to mention you're listening to sometimes 20 speaker systems in a
True
car.
story.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
While it might be really taxing the aftermarket audio business, it's remarkable. I just put a double-din stereo in my stepdaughter's Honda. Paid $100 for this JVC unit with Bluetooth, and it's got a phone compatibility. It was $100.
Just a wonderful time to be alive.
CarPlay and Android Auto, like they're catering to making everything super
seamless.
easy and like from the get-go, like you don't even need to
Finally,
go aftermarket.
I think that's actually it's taken a while, but it's like I think that's great.
A lot of the vehicles you couldn't go aftermarket, and you're stuck with what you got
with whatever weird shaped radio they put in the dash.
And like all the security systems and stuff is
integrated
all going through
climate.
the radio. And then to that point of all the speakers and stuff, it wasn't that long ago, maybe 20 years ago. Cars were fully developed, and then they put radios in them. Now, all the aftermarket, like Bose people and all that, they're involved in the development of cars from the get-go.
Right.
Tuning them acoustically. And
You got Harman Kardon and all the
those
people
dudes.
are in it.
I like Bang & Olufsen the best, personally.
They do have a very, very nice sound system.
It's fun to drive down the highway and have so many choices for
And
it to
satellite
listen to.
radio? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know.
Commercial-less radio?
And it goes from coast to coast.
I am so happy I live now and
not when we just had
70s or
AMs.
80s. Yeah.
All right. Okay, that was a good one to end on. Thanks very much, everybody. Our MotorWeek podcast number 138 comes to the close. I want to thank our writer-producer, Brian Robinson, road test producer Ben Davis, assistant producer Greg Carlos, writer Patrick Lucas, who's also the producer of the podcast and the man with the bell, our audio engineer Jim Bigwood, and our podcast creator Bob Mixter. Thanks to all of you for listening to our podcast. We hope you catch MotorWeek on public television stations everywhere, also on the Velocity cable channel. John Davis for all of us at MotorWeek. Thanks for watching and listening, and we hope we'll see you soon, one way or another, at MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and by RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.